Faith is expressed in all parts of life through architecture, water, bonsai. You know what bonsai is? The little tiny sculpted plants that you see. Yeah, that's an expression of their faith. Prayers and sacrifices offered at shrines. You know what shrines are? They're collections of things that people put around graves or at crypts or mausoleums, remembrances. If you want to see some shrines, you can go up to our cemetery. There are some shrines up there. It would be my opinion that people have come and they've placed things on people's graves in remembrance of those people. It can get a little out of control at some times. You got to be really careful about how we do that. The shrines that I'm familiar with are typically little rooms. They look like little closets, and the people oftentimes will bring them food because you might need to eat in the afterlife, and so they'll bring food and they'll bring rocks and bones and all kinds of flowers, and there'll be jewelry and things that are kind of scattered around there, and it's kind of interesting. Origami. When we think of origami, what do we think of? Folding napkins. Folding napkins, right? Paper airplanes, right? Yeah. Well, thank your Shinto neighbors for that. They began as prayers, whispered over graves, and then they began to write them on sheets of paper and cloth, and they would tie them to the trees. And it was said that as the wind blew and rustled the papers, that the prayers would be repeated, which is kind of a romantic kind of an image.
Can you imagine that around here?
We'd be filling the skies with prayers, wouldn't we? Yes, we would. Yeah, kind of a neat romantic image of that. So folding that origami, doing that paper thing, and it's a form of prayer. Yeah, that would be a parallel, a yellow ribbon or
just paper.
Anything, yeah. Maybe even decorating a Christmas tree makes sense. In Shinto, the elderly are revered. That's a good thing. And even deceased descendants are consulted for important decisions. So maybe that might be a little bit extreme. And the graves of ancestors are visited for reflection and meditation. And I think that that's maybe true of us as well. Maybe not to the level that this implies, but certainly we care for our dead in some similar ways as the people of Shinto. All right. Well, we got 5 questions on the back. There's some Bibles on the back table. 1 question, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. All right, let's hear what you have to say for question 1. Read the question, Stephen, or someone at the table.
What prompted Peter's question to Jesus, where are you going? In chapter 13, verse 36. Well, prior to that, he was explaining to the disciples that he was not going to be with them always.
He predicts his death.
Right. But without saying it in plain English that I'm going to die, he was trying to prepare them, and they just weren't getting it quite at that point. So Peter asked the question, well, where are you going?
But yeah, and after the denial, Peter says, "Oh, there's no way. That's never going to happen, right? Why is he trying to prepare? What is the reason?" Right. Why is it important that we see that through the Gospels that he's constantly predicting his death 3 or 4 times? Why? And they're not getting it, but why?
Be with his father.
Right.
And you can't come with me.
Right.
I'm going to go someplace that you can't come
And
now.
and what happens
Come
then?
later.
And what happens then when he dies and rises? All of a sudden they're remembering back to these incredible conversations that they had with him. He said he was going to do this. Wow. Good, did you guys come up with anything, you had question one as well, what did you decide? Okay, right. How would you feel if you've been following somebody around day and night for 3 years? And all of a sudden you say, you know, it's over, you can't follow anymore. I mean, you can kind of see where, you know, of course, very good, yeah, absolutely afraid. You know, what's gonna happen now? Am I gonna have to go back to fishing for a living? Yeah, there's a lot of fear there. Oh, yeah, good. That would be something you'd wanna know, wouldn't it? You know? Yeah. Good, question 2. Read the question.
Where was Jesus going? What steps would he take to get there? And why? That's the important question for us.
Okay. So, where was Jesus going?
He's going to heaven,
Okay, he's gonna go to heaven.
and to get there, he has to die for us.
Just, we have to die too to get there, right? So the only way to get to heaven is to die, right? What does the country song say? What does it say? Everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to go now? Something like that? Yeah, okay.
Tired of living, scared of dying,
Yeah,
just like that old man river.
Old Man River. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so he's going, specifically, he's going to Jerusalem, to Golgotha, to the cross, to the tomb, to the resurrection, to the ascension, and eventually to heaven. So all of this is what's getting, fixing to take place, right? Okay, so those are the steps he would follow, and then why? Why does Jesus have to die?
So we can go.
So we can too, right? Yeah, very good. Yeah, we need Jesus. We need this perfect sacrifice. We need this atonement. We can't get back to where God is, you know, without it. We need Jesus, and Jesus has to die for us. And it's a happy exchange. It's a happy exchange. He goes and he does this willingly, right? And this is what he came to do. Yeah. Okay. Gladly exchanging his life for ours. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Yeah. Okay. Question 3.
It says, what does Jesus do when he tells Thomas, I am the way and the truth and the life?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of self-explanatory, and we kind of got it as he's the only way. Like, he
The one and
is,
only God.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to believe in him and only him.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're not getting
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no life without him, right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's the truth, right? Good. Good. This looks like a smart table.
We have little bitty.
Well, let me-
What'd you come up with, Rich?
Why would a Shinto believer be amazed or troubled by Jesus' words? Well, because Jesus is acting like a supreme person, and they don't believe in supreme rulers, they believe in nature.
Right, so no, they would have a lot of trouble recognizing the lordship or kingship of Jesus, right? And very, very good answer, and there's not a lot of nature worship, room for nature worship in that confession of Jesus as the anointed one, as the Messiah, as the Christ, right? Excellent, super. And the last question. I told you that was smart.
You read the next one too,
What you guys, this is what? Well, don't be too quiet. What's your question?
She's got it all written down.
The characteristics of God are revealed not only through the world he made, but through his word, and especially through his son. What truths about God would you point out to the Shinto faith? Okay. And we got the item, go ahead.
I am the way, the truth and the life.
Right,
And if you have known who I am with knowing who my Father is.
right. Yeah, how do we know God? We know God through the Son. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. So we can't know God any other way. Okay. Wonderful. Questions, observations, reflections about Shinto, the national religion of
to practice Shintoism?
I don't think so. I think it's just a formally recognized religion. It's similar to the Russian Orthodox, recognized by that government in Russia, I suppose. I don't think there's actually a requirement. But I know. Maybe there was at one time, but I don't think that's true.
Are there Christian churches in Japan?
Oh, certainly, absolutely. The ELCA alone has about 28 missionaries in Japan. Lutheran Church has been active in Japan for about 100 years. And so I think that Christianity in Japan is probably a relatively recent development. Yes, absolutely.
They were told, like in Japan, Korea, and China, that they could not believe in Christ. They had 40 people at one time, and it spread into like 400,000 within a short period of time because it was such a powerful, Christianity was such a powerful religion that they were afraid it was going to stop their government.
Now they're afraid Islam's going to do the same thing. But you're right. I mean, there's some apostolic giftedness happening. The Church of Jesus Christ is spread throughout the world, and Christianity began to spread into China and India, places like that, through the original disciples who set out from Jerusalem with their gospels and began to grow. We hear so much more about the spread of Christianity through Asia Minor and into Europe, into Italy and places like that. And we don't hear as much about the fact that it's when Paul was making his 5 journeys through Asia Minor and Southern Europe, other disciples and apostles were making trips down into Africa and India and China, so it was spreading in other ways. We just don't often hear about those kinds of things. You picked up the Gospel of Thomas, which is an apocryphal book and not considered to be part of our canon. It talks a little bit about the spread of the gospel of Jesus Christ in other parts of the world.